So I will get started. And thank you everybody for joining the mental health survey results on this snowy, blustery night. Hopefully everybody is at home and safe. So this is NEA's presentation on the mental health survey results from the mental health survey that we sent out a couple months ago. And we wanted to give all of the participants and anybody interested a little information into what we got for results and what we plan on doing with the results themselves. So a little bit about the presenters this evening. My name is Joan. I work as a paraprofessional at Merrimack Valley High School right now. I just received my master's in public health, and I've been really interested in mental health awareness, and working in special education services. I've been doing that for a few years now. That's a picture of me and my son right there. If you see us, feel free to say hello, stop in. We're not always in costume, so don't be fooled. The other presenter this evening is Emily Sori-Backus. She's an MPH candidate right now, and she is our intern and our mental health first aid trainer for NEA, which is really exciting. So a little bit into why we decided to do the mental health survey. Well, we really wanted to understand what the school staff in New Hampshire thought and believe are the mental health needs of both staff and students. We recognize that this is an ongoing problem that some people, I think, don't feel is addressed. So we want to address it with the staff in the schools, and we want to be able to provide access to both knowledge, to trainings, to resources for people to further their knowledge, and places that people can go so that they feel supported when working with students with mental health challenges, or themselves, if they're faced with a mental health challenge. So some statistics that we're just, going off of as to how prevalent this is in schools is 1 in 5 students aged 13 to 18 have or will have a serious mental illness during this period. So that's 20% of students. That's a lot of students that we work with in daily, in our daily lives. 1 in 8 students aged 8 to 13 have or will have a serious mental illness during this time period. So a little younger, but still really prevalent when it comes to mental health disorders. 11% of youth have a mood disorder. 10% of youth have a behavior or conduct disorder, and 8% of youth have an anxiety disorder. So educators and school staff can see some of these trends, can see a lot of students who are disrupted by different mental health conditions, by different issues going on in their lives. And these are, the things that we are seeing. Half of all chronic mental illness begins by age 14. 3/4 begin by age 24. So the age population that, public schools are working with is really the age where a lot of chronic mental illnesses will begin to show themselves. Some more statistics: over 1/3 of students, so 37%, with a mental health condition, age 14 to 21 and older, who are served by special education, drop out. This is the highest dropout rate of any disability group. So this is students with mental health conditions who are in special education, who now aren't receiving services from the school, who aren't, accessing, the public education system. That's a place where they can really get help. And it's really sad to see something like this occur. And of course, you can't talk about mental health without addressing suicide. Suicide statistics they're just horrifying. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for people aged 10 to 14. It's the 2nd leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 24. It's the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. for the entire adult population. I know a lot of us have unfortunately come across students who have committed suicide, students who have committed suicide in our school communities. It takes a really, really big toll on the community. And of course, it's so sad. And then more than 90% of children who die from suicide have a mental health condition. There are some clues as to when these might happen. And I think that building awareness, building training, building school resilience together is a good place to start in addressing this. And some New Hampshire specific statistics. New Hampshire right now has surpassed the U.S. average in teen suicide. So right now, we are the dark blue bolded line, and the U.S. population average is the light blue, the lower one. So it is going up, teen suicide in New Hampshire. These are CDC statistics, so these are reliable sources. This is really sad. This isn't something that we want to see as educators, as parents. This is something that we want to address. And then from New Hampshire specific statistics as well, from the BRSSS, which is a behavioral risk survey. This is done also by CDC. So the percent of high school students who report they felt sad or hopeless during the past 12 months before this survey was conducted in New Hampshire is 27% of students. So almost 1/3 of our students in the school systems is feeling sad or hopeless. And then the percent of adolescents ages 12 to 17 who report one major depressive episode during the last 12 months is 12% in the New Hampshire total. So that's a lot of students that we're dealing with. And I think that the point of these statistics is just to show the prevalence and how important it is that we address this topic. We can't address it enough, I don't think. And of course, some other reasons why it's important in schools to address mental health is teachers and staff need to review IEPs at some point in their career for the most part. You need to understand the lingo. You need to understand what some of these conditions are, how they can affect students, and what that means for their, life growing up, how their life has been. Teachers and staff have students with diagnosed mental health conditions, like I said, so you need to understand those conditions and be able to help the students as much as possible. Teachers and staff have students with undiagnosed mental health conditions too. So being aware, knowing those signs, knowing about mental health conditions, and just learning about it more can help these students through school and then through life for the rest of their life. Students also spend a significant amount of time in their schools, of course. Students often make more relationships, with school staff than they do sometimes with their own family members. They're spending so much time with their school staff that we are, as school staff, on the front line of noticing and addressing these mental health illnesses. And then, of course, schools are really, really great resources for mental health for students. So especially when we're talking about students dropping out who have mental health illnesses, sometimes they're not receiving support that they need because school is a great place to get that support. So let's get into the survey results. So we got over 650 results. Responses. That is really, really amazing. Thank you so much to anybody who responded to the survey. They were really wonderful. It was amazing to go through them and see all the support that we have coming from just the different educators and different school staff. So the questions, if you weren't familiar with it, if you didn't take it, were 5 questions. Number 1, what grade level do you primarily work with? Number 2, what departments do you work with? What department do you work for within the school? 3, if any, what do you see as the top 3 mental health concerns in the school for students? Number 4, if any, what do you see as the top 3 mental health concerns in the school for staff? And number 5, if any, what professional development would you like made available to the school regarding mental health for both students and staff? So, the first response, for what grade level do you primarily work with? The most respondents we got were elementary school staff, which was a little surprising to us for some reason. We thought there would just be more from middle school and high school, but it's really amazing to see that many elementary school staff that spoke out and answered this, so thank you. Teachers were the largest department that answered the survey. And then in terms of mental health concerns for students, of course, there were a lot of different responses that we got. This is just a few of the responses that we got for the mental health concerns for students. I'm just going to go over the top 5 for these next couple categories, just because there's so many of them. But so when we're talking about mental health concerns for students and what the staff felt was the biggest concern, is we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about depression, trauma, unstable home, and addiction. I think that all of these top 5 that were listed are all societal trends that we're seeing, and I think all speak out to the level of need that there is. You know, a lot of students are facing anxiety and depression. A lot of students do have trauma and unstable home, unfortunately, due to things like the opioid crisis, which is a pretty New Hampshire specific issue going on right now that we're faced with as educators, and we see this all the time. So I think that absolutely, I totally agreed with all of these responses that we were seeing, and of course something that we want to address too. So moving into mental health concerns for the staff themselves, again, we are looking at stress, we're looking at anxiety, depression, and then of course what adds to that, which I think really weighs heavily on that stress, anxiety, depression, is the fact that people feel like the schools are very short-staffed right now and that there's a lack of support. A lot of the responses talked about short-staffed, especially in places such as special education, or that there was a lot of lack of support around taking care of students, around supporting students with mental health concerns. So I think that totally goes along with the theme of mental health and taking care of the students, but not only that, taking care of the staff who feel short-staffed and who feel, you know, extra stress, extra anxiety, extra depression, and any other mental health concerns due to, you know, the mass of mental health issues going on in the schools. So some professional development, again, all the responses were really wonderful. I think that I think a lot of people expressed that they had a need and wanted some form of professional development, which is really nice to hear, is that people want to learn more about this. So the top 5 for these were coping strategies, working with students of today. So that category kind of incorporated working with students with mental health issues, also working with students, you know, in unstable homes, talking about working with students who are involved with the opioid crisis. So professional development also on common disorders, mental health awareness, and then trauma-informed care, which is a up-and-coming, very, very popular development that we are seeing more of. And that's something that we're going to be focusing on in the future too. And development for staff, there were less of these, and that was brought to my attention earlier, just because I think that we should have broken up the question into 2 parts, asking what professional development for staff and for students, just because it was kind of hard in the responses to decipher which professional development was supposed to be for staff and which was supposed to be for students. So this is really what we got for students specifically. Coping strategies was the largest category, maintaining mental health awareness, breaking away from technology, and then mental health resources. So these are all professional development that staff believe that students would benefit from seeing. And I mean, in total agreement that all of this, I don't think that to, you know, make a school more resilient in terms of mental health, you can avoid doing work with the students themselves and getting them involved and getting them to professional development and trainings and helping them learn how to help themselves and their peers the same. So with these results, NEA New Hampshire obviously wants to and is planning on doing some major things in the near future that we're really looking forward to, and we hope you all attend those as well. First and foremost being the Spring Instructional Conference. This is being run April 6th at Pembroke Academy from 8 to 5 p.m. The lead person at the workshop is going to be Emily Daniels, who is really wonderful. If you've had it or if you've seen any of her stuff. And then from these mental health survey results, we came up with a 3-part workshop series that we're planning on running. So the first is ACEs Part 1, ACEs being adverse childhood experiences and deals a lot with trauma and what trauma can do to a student. So the Part 1 is going to look at different statistics, facts, and life course outcomes for students who have been involved with trauma. ACEs Part 2 is going to be working with students who have suffered trauma and simple techniques to use in the classroom tomorrow. That training is not going to be necessarily, you know, what can we do in the long run, but it's going to be for staff who want to be able to leave the room with, you know, some techniques, some right now, what can I do to make a student's day easier tomorrow? What can I do tomorrow to better a relationship that I have been struggling with a student who I believe to have suffered trauma or to have a mental health illness? And then the last and third workshop that we're offering for that is put your own mask on first. And what this is about is avoiding compassion fatigue and preparing yourself mentally to work with students who have mental health struggles. It's it is so obvious that it's really hard to work with students who are suffering themselves. It wears on staff themselves, and I think that's spoken true of when we see how many people responded to this, is I think staff are having a hard time dealing with how many students are dealing with mental health issues themselves, and it's wearing on the staff. So we really want to help staff learn how to take care of themselves to work with those students better. And then Emily will be taking over a little bit from here to explain mental health first aid and how she's going to be running that.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me. This is Emily. So mental health first aid is kind of a course that I and a lot of other people in the country teach. It's similar to a first aid or a CPR class in that it doesn't teach you to become a professional or a mental health professional or a therapist or a doctor, any of those things, but it can help you develop skills to help someone who might be in an emergency or be developing a mental health problem. So like you would help someone who has a cut, you wouldn't be their doctor, but you would get them to the care that they need. So in the same way, but with people with mental health problems. Helps the public identify, understand, and respond to the signs of mental illness and get people the care they need. It's an 8-hour day. There's actually 2 different courses. There's an adult one, which is the one I teach, and a youth one. So that's based on the population that you're talking to or helping. Like I said, it's an 8-hour day. There's lots of activities. You get a book that you can go back to that's actually really helpful. And yeah. So NEA is sponsoring a couple of mental health first aid courses, the first one on Saturday, March 9th, and the second one on Saturday, May 4th. They're both 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at NEA in Concord, and those will be presented by me. So if you're interested in reserving a seat to those, you can email me at the email address that's on the screen right now.
Is planning on doing other things with the mental health service. It's not going to stop just here. So some other things that we plan on doing is the March edition of The Educator, which is the NEA paper that's sent out. Hopefully everybody receives that and looks at it. Well, there's a reason to look at it now is the March edition will have a segment on mental health, and we're going to be putting some different articles in there. We're just trying to put some resources out there for people to familiarize themselves with mental health awareness, some different articles from around the country that are really good, really powerful. So that'll be something to look forward to. There's also the Summer Leadership Summit, August 5th through the 9th. The 3-part workshop will be offered there, and we're looking to expand on the trainings that we're going to be offering. We just don't know specifically what trainings will be offered. And the same goes for the fall conference on October 11th of this year. So the 3-part workshop will be offered, and if we do come up with more trainings, by that time we will be offering those as well, hopefully. So, you know, as long as there's interest, as long as people are wanting more, then we hope to be able to do that. And then with that 3-part training series, NEA wants to be able to go to interested schools and present the information. We want to make it as available to as many schools as we can. In doing that, people can become presenters themselves. So NEA is willing to train members as presenters. If this is something that you or somebody you know would be interested in, please contact Irv Richardson. His email is right there. What I will say is these slides will be posted afterwards, so you will be able to get that. And in doing that, there will be some sort of course that you'll have to go through to take just to familiarize yourself with the content beforehand. But also coming up from NEA is, I think, another big piece of this that we want to see is what your school is currently doing to positively target mental health issues. So this is going to come in two forms. We're hopefully going to send out just a small, short survey, possibly just with this one question, just like we did the last survey. So hopefully we get, you know, over 600 responses again. And then we also plan on talking to different departments within different schools to get a good feel. So places like the guidance counselors and the special ed departments and those different departments to get a really good feel for what some of the schools look like and what some of the landscapes of mental health in the schools are and what those schools are doing to positively target that. And then Emily, I don't know if you want to talk, give the update on the other opportunities.
Yeah, so the mental health first aid website's a really good place to find mental health first aid courses, especially if those ones on those Saturdays don't work for you. So these are some youth opportunities that we just found on that website, so you can go in there and find your own course as well. But these are some ones in the area that are coming up in March and May. Those are the youth ones. And then I think on the next slide, there's the adult ones. Yep. So you can go to that link on the bottom of the page here, the purple one, to sign up for those if you're interested.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so absolutely, thank you so much for coming out this evening and listening to this. These slides will be posted along with the audio that goes along with the slides afterwards. But of course, I want to open it up right now to any questions that people have. You're more than welcome to leave a comment. I'm just going to have to exit out of the presentation itself for me to see that. Or feel free to unmute yourself and ask as well. Ooh, what am I doing?